What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Nick and I hope you guys are doing well whenever you are checking out the latest video today. Today is the continuation of the every TV show I have seen tier list here that we started about a month ago now. This is part number 5, believe it or not, which is super dope that we can continue this series. I know you guys have been absolutely loving it here. We are continuing with this gigantic tier list we have of over 750 different TV shows here. We've already filled out a good portion of it, but we still have quite a few more to go here. I'm going to hope and try to get this done within 2 more parts here, so I'm hoping to get done about half of what we have left for this tier list here. So let's dive right into it here. Before we get to it, I just want to point out this awesome SpongeBob shirt that I got on here. You can see the font, it says there, 20 years later, and then on the back, you got the array of different SpongeBob characters here. So we had to theme it for today because, of course, we're getting back into the TV videos here. We'd love to see it. So with that said, let's dive right back into the tier list here, beginning with our next show, which is Danger Dolan. If this is your first time watching anything in this series, we also do have a bunch of different web shows and YouTube shows as well that I'm counting as TV shows here. And for Danger Dolan, I'm putting it in the Matt tier because honestly, that was definitely more Matt's thing growing up. It was just basically like list ranking videos on just different weird subjects, kind of like Watch Mojo style. And it had some fun, elements to it, but it just wasn't very sustainable. They ended up really kind of dipping in subscribers and views after a while, and it just wasn't really something that was consistent enough to hold down a steady audience there. So I'm going to put them just in the Met here. Reading Rainbow we have next with, of course, LeVar Burton here. What a legend. Absolutely love this guy. You can't really hate on Reading Rainbow. I mean, it is very it's obviously aimed at kids and it's educational, but I'm going to put it in the great tier because I grew up with Reading Rainbow. I have a ton of nostalgia for it. That theme song, of course, it was recently going viral on TikTok, which was really fun to see. I love it, man. I'm definitely going to put it high up in the great tier there. Dope or Nope, another YouTube show. This one I'm also going to put in just the Met tier. I haven't really seen that much of it. It's definitely on the lower end of the just quantity that I've seen for any of these shows, but the few videos that I watch from it, it just isn't really that exciting. It's just these two guys that test various products they find online on Amazon and stuff, and they tell you if it's worth buying or not. It's just a very simple, straightforward idea that just doesn't really have a lot of personality to it, at least in my opinion. So it'll go in the Met tier. The King of Random here. This one really hurts, man, because if you guys know The King of Random, at least the old days of The King of Random with Grant Thompson as the original host, he was phenomenal. He was one of my favorite YouTube hosts of all time there. And then when he unfortunately passed away not that long ago, only I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, it was tragic, and it was super just unexpected, it just crazy. Sort of what happened with him. He was in a paragliding accident and was rushed to the hospital and died on the scene, which is just incredibly sad. And the channel had been going through a transition with getting some new hosts on and getting some new faces onto the videos. And then when he passed away, they just fully made the transition to this dude Nate that ended up hosting the videos. And then he also left the channel not too long ago, and that was only a few months ago. That was right at the end of 2021, so it hasn't been that long. And then they have a crop of new people that come in. I don't even know who they have now because I just don't even bother to watch it, because when Grant died, that was pretty much the end of it for me. So all that said, I'm gonna put it in the good tier. I think it still is solid enough for what they do. They do kind of science experiments, and they do a lot of engineering type stuff. They just do these kind of crazy tests, and they make all these different gadgets. It's pretty interesting stuff, but again, it just doesn't have the same sort of energy or the same personality it once did, because Grant was really the heart and soul of it, and without him it just isn't the same. So all things said, I'm gonna kind of balance it out and put it in the good tier. Following that, next up, another YouTuber here named LS Mark we have next on our tier list. I really enjoy LS Mark. He does a lot of commentary review type stuff on different animated movies and different animated shows. Matt really enjoys him because he does these crazy long, 5-6 hour long retrospectives on adult cartoons. So he's done one for The Simpsons and he's done one for Family Guy, which is really dope. Matt keeps saying that he wants to see a South Park one done, which is going to be pretty awesome to see when that happens. But yeah, he's super dedicated, super hilarious, like laugh out loud funny. So all things pointing to him getting a thumbs up for me here, putting him safely in the great tier. Following him, we have Dashi next up. Probably best known now for his gaming-related content that he does, Dashi XP. But back in the day, he used to do like sketch comedy, and his theming was like an occupation. So it'd be like a realtor or a chef or a doctor or something, but it would be a ghetto version of it. So it'd be like doctor or a ghetto chef or ghetto doctor or something. And it would just be ball out, and it would just be so funny and so crazy. I don't really watch his gaming stuff all that much. I've kind of transitioned away from that myself, but I really do have some nostalgia for his ghetto series back in the day. The ghetto chefs were so fucking funny. He'd just be making like the craziest fucking meals, man. He'd be doing the cereal pizza and stuff. Oh man, that's a classic video. I absolutely love that. So I'm going to put it in the good tier, again, kind of balancing out some of the better stuff with some of the lesser stuff for me, kind of going somewhere in the middle there on our tier list. Next up is Rebel Taxi here. This is another channel that Matt really enjoys. He does a lot of the animated stuff as well, and very similar to LS Mark. I'm going to put him up in the great tier there. Don't watch him as often because most of the topics that he covers are a little more obscure, so there's not as much of that widespread, like, you definitely recognize the shows or the movies that he discusses. He really dives into more kind of underground and more obscure stuff, which is nice because if you've never heard of it, then it's a really interesting introduction to some of these lesser known topics. He also does a lot of lost media stuff, which is really cool. That's how I kind of discovered him initially. So all that said, I really do dig his work. I think great tier is where he's going to go. Oh, one show, unfortunately, that is not going to go up there, however, is The Middle here next up. You guys already know, get it out of here, fuck The Middle. My buddy Mike actually made a video not that long ago where he talked about a bunch of shows that are very popular that he does not ever want to see. He just refuses to watch these shows, and he had The Middle very, very high up on that list. I think it was in his top 3 actually for that particular video, and the way that he described it was he always thought of it as a ripoff to Malcolm in the Middle, and that's actually a really good description of it because it does follow a lot of those same steps and it has a lot of those same beats to it. And it just feels like such a watered-down copycat of what, Malcolm in the Middle really paved the way for back in the early 2000s here. This just coming in and just undermining a lot of the good that show really did for comedy here. So, unfortunately, really, really low bar for just any comedic type of sitcom here. I'm going to put it in the bottom of the barrel tier. Get it the fuck out of here. Transitioning to that, we have another YouTube channel here in the form of Watch Mojo. We've already talked about some of the other channels within the Watch Mojo brand, I guess you could say. But the OG one here, I'm actually going to put relatively high up. I'm going to put it in the great tier. I do enjoy a lot of their stuff. The biggest issue that I have with Watch Mojo, and this is not by any means a unpopular opinion here, is just they put too much stuff out. They put out way too much content. Like a lot of people say that I put a lot of stuff out. I try to upload pretty much like every other day or like, at least a few times a week. Watch Mojo will upload upwards of like 5 or 6 videos every single day. So if you figure that out weekly, that's at least like 30 to 40 videos every week. And that's just way too much to keep up with. Most of the topics as well, like there's a specific number of them that you're interested in. So for me, I watch a lot of the music and TV related stuff most of the time, sometimes with like movies or other pop culture stuff, but sometimes they get really specific because they have so many videos they put out. And it's just like, nobody's ever gonna watch this. Nobody's ever gonna watch the top 10, best tigers in literature or some, random fucking obscure ass topic that they pick. But when they do it well, the best thing about their videos is that it really creates a bunch of discussion. It's really interesting to see what they justify putting at number 1 or like how they organize it, because it really challenges your thoughts on how we perceive, what is good and what is bad. depending on the topic. And most of the time, they do take a more objective stance, which I think is actually really nice because it gives you like a hard pressed stat to put with this placement here. If you say like this album sold, you know, X amount of copies or has this score on Metacritic or something, that's a more justifiable argument to put it higher than this other album that sold less copies, right? And they'll kind of take that stance on it, which I try to imitate in my own videos. So I have some appreciation for that. But again, the criticisms there are very easy to figure out and very easy to throw shade at them at times. So I can see why people would have beef with Watch Mojo, put it lower. But for me, I do enjoy them. So I'm going to put them up relatively high here. The rap critic here, I have to put this guy in the bad tier. I used to really dig this guy. He does a lot of, obviously based on his name, the rap critic. He reviews hip-hop songs and hip-hop albums, and he'll do, you know, year-end lists. He'll do like the top 10 best songs of the year and such. But his production quality is so bad. It's awful. Like, my production quality is better than his, and he has 250,000 subscribers, and I have 1,500, you know, and it's crazy. And I know that, like, you know, the equipment you use and such, that obviously doesn't have any bearing on the quality of the videos, but it's so distracting because sometimes, especially the sound is really bad, and I suffer from that too. This video is probably gonna sound like shit now that I said that. I just jinxed myself. But with his, though, it's like you can't even hear what he's saying. You have your volume up all the way, and you can barely make out what he's saying. And he talks really, really, like, boldly and uses a lot of, like, big vocabulary and stuff to describe these songs. And he tries to do it in a comedic way, but it always just feels so flat. You know, it just doesn't really hit. Sometimes the problem is the song in question is super obscure, so you don't even know what the hell he's talking about. I mean, there's just so many negative aspects you can throw at him. The best things that he ever did, in my opinion, was when he collabed with other Channel Awesome people. So he'll do like a collab with, you know, like Todd in the Shadows or someone, and he'll do a song review together, which is really cool. But when it's just his solo stuff, he's easily one of the worst out there. So in my opinion, bad tier is where he belongs. As does our next show here on the TV tier list, which is Mulaney here, basically just a Seinfeld ripoff. That's probably what it's best known for now. I love John Mulaney. He is a legend. He's great on SNL. He's a great stand-up comic. He's one of the funniest people on planet Earth, but his sitcom here just absolutely failed to match all of the hype because it just completely watered down what they were trying to imitate, which is Seinfeld. They have him as a comic in New York City, hanging out with friends in this apartment, and there's a really eccentric character in the form of, on this show, he's played by Martin Short, so that's kind of the Kramer equivalent. You have Nassim Pedrad from SNL, who plays the Elaine equivalent, so it just really tried to be, you know, it wore its influences way too close on its sleeve, and it just showed all of its cracks way too early on. It was Seinfeld, but like just a very lesser version of it and just a watered down version of it. I've talked a lot on this channel about the Seinfeld pilot. There are times when watching this show, you're like, dude, I think I'd rather watch the pilot of Seinfeld than watch some of Mulaney, bro, because it was really, really bad. So as a whole, yeah, definitely avoid this one. Bad tier it goes. Camp Unplugged. This is a really interesting one because this was, to my knowledge, the only ever show, quote unquote, that was done on Vine, actually. So this is even before like YouTube really started doing that stuff, and TikTok, and I really enjoy it. I'm going to put it in the great tier. It's definitely like, the thing with it now is it's kind of hard to find a lot of the episodes because they had like one big episode that it was almost like a movie equivalent, but then they had all these little short segments that they would play in the form of vines that would kind of fill in a lot of the gaps in between what the main story was. And the catch was it was all big Viners at the time. So they had people like Danny Gonzalez, and they had Drew Gooden was on there, and he's, you know, they're both big YouTubers now. Most people have migrated to YouTube, so they still have a platform and they still have an audience, which is really cool. But yeah, it was just a very silly, you know, fun idea that was executed very well. in a very, very strong sort of way that was unique for the time, because again, this was before YouTube even started doing these big, multifaceted projects like this. So very, very ambitious, and I think they pulled it off really well. A Dose of Buckley. He is absolutely one of my favorite YouTubers of all time, man. He is going directly way up in the God tier status. I absolutely fucking love this guy, man. He is so funny, laugh out loud. He is so consistent too. He puts out one video every single week. It's not too much. He doesn't overwhelm you with uploads every Saturday. Every Saturday at noon exactly, you're gonna get a Dose of Buckley video, which is great to see that consistency. The best thing about him is he's so just like deadpan. He will just tell it exactly like it is. He'll cover some more controversial topics at times. He covers some political stuff at times, but it's so funny the way that he just words everything, because he's so blunt with what his thoughts are on it. He's like, yeah, this guy's fucking stupid. He doesn't hold anything back. And it's just one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And then he also does a lot of music reviews, so that's kind of what he was known for early on. That's how I gravitated towards him naturally. And his year-end lists are always great. The top 10 worst songs of the year, where he just does like a big, dissection of these popular songs in just the funniest way possible, man. He always rips on, the easy targets like Justin Bieber and stuff, but then sometimes he'll throw people in there that you wouldn't expect, like more modern people and stuff, and you're like, whoa, what's he doing here? What's he gonna say about Lil Nas X or, Travis Scott or someone like that? So it's just a ton of fun, and does it in just such a consistent way, like I said, so you can't hate him whatsoever. God tier status he goes. Next up here, we have The Burger Show here from First We Feast. I think we did talk about Hot Ones earlier, and so this is another show under their banner. They do a lot of, cooking stuff and a lot of food-related stuff, and I really do dig it. I'm going to put it in the great tier. Burgers, I mean, they're versatile. I mean, it seems maybe limited to some degree to make a whole show about one specific food item, but burgers are pretty versatile and you can do a lot with them. And the host, Alvin, here is a ton of fun, man. He is so lively, so personable. They always bring in really great guests. They always have, some YouTube chefs or celebrity chefs on there. They have like Joshua Weissman was on it, and Molly from Bon Appetit was really fun to see. They did a really cool breakfast burger that looked really, really good. That was one of my favorite dishes they ever made. But yeah, it's just a lot of fun, very wholesome, a good comfort show for sure. If you like cooking shows like me, that's going to be right up your alley, The Burger Show. Next up is You Suck at Cooking here. This is a very different style of cooking show. Very fast-paced, very comedic style at times. He does a lot of like really interesting kind of avant-garde comedy at times, which is very fun. I'm going to put it in the good tier. It's not exactly what I'm looking for when I see a cooking show. This is definitely like more in the sense that he's trying to bridge the gap between like just a regular sketch comedy type of thing and then like a traditional cooking show. And sometimes it doesn't play as well as you want it to, and it just comes out kind of like half-baked, no pun intended at times, but it's still a very unique idea, and he does have a lot of personality to it, so I'll say good tier for that. One of the biggest cooking shows on YouTube of all time here is Binging with Babish, of course, and he is going straight up as well into the God tier. He really popped off in like late 2017, early 2018, I believe, is when he really started getting some traction here. And the dude has just been absolutely killing it as far as, subscribers go. I think he is the most subscribed cooking show or like internet-based cooking show on YouTube, which is super impressive. He has, just a ton of great personalities that come on. Like they have a bunch of different shows under the Binging with Babish name now, or the Babish Culinary Universe is what they've rebranded it as. But they have a lot of really interesting guests on there. He'll have like collabs and stuff. He does all sorts of stuff in the world of just, cooking media, which is really unique. And of course, his whole gimmick is he'll take a food from a TV show or a movie and he'll try to recreate it in real life. And sometimes they work out really well, and sometimes it's a total disaster. You never know what you're going to get. But some of my favorites, especially from the TV ones, are like when he does a dish that's so over the top and so just, you know, crazy big and expensive. Like he'll do like the every meat burrito from a regular show or something like that, or the ultimate sandwich from Adventure Time was great. There were just so many like ones, especially from like cartoons, where they can go very elaborate stuff that he tries to scale down and make in real life, and it's just super entertaining all the time. Of course, you can't forget about the Krabby Patty. That's his most viewed video, I believe, as well, from SpongeBob there. So that's a really great one. So yeah, just absolutely love the guy. Super wholesome as well. Great stuff. Next up is Content Cop here from iDubbbz. Ian here. Very controversial, very polarizing show. Some people absolutely hate this guy because he's not afraid to speak his mind, let me tell you. He is definitely another one similar to Buckley, who just gets in, you know, every last word that he can and just absolutely just rips apart these people in every facet, and just destroys their careers almost. At his peak, he was able to take a once thriving channel and just completely shut it down with one video, which is insane to think that someone had that much, you know, influence and power, but that's how good the videos were because he just had so much personality behind him. He has slowed down. I don't think he's made an episode proper for like at least like 4 years now or something, so I don't know if he's ever going to come back with more, but like I said, at his peak, it was easily one of the best. The episode on Keemstar especially is like one of the most infamous, and it's well-deserved because before then, I absolutely hated Keemstar, and then after watching that, you just like absolutely hate him even more. Like all the disturbing, just terrible things that he's done with his career, and you know, like just being a racist dick and all this stuff. I mean, I don't even have time to go into it, but yeah, just really interesting to see like how far down the rabbit hole he can go at times. Following then, another cooking show we have here is Burger Lab, hosted by Richard Blaze. This is from a channel called, what was it called back in the day? It doesn't exist anymore. It was like Eater or Foodies or something like kind of cliche like that. I don't remember exactly. But this show was really fun. Very similar to Burger Lab. That's all they made was burgers. And similarly, I'm going to put it in the same tier there, in the great tier. This was one of the earliest shows I remember watching where it felt like an actual TV show that was, you know, it came on once a week. They premiered a new episode, and it had a very consistent schedule to it. It was every Monday. So I'd come home from school and I'd watch the episode, which was a lot of fun. And this was when, like, for me, back in like 2012 or so, 2013, when they were, you know, in production, when it really started clicking that YouTube specifically could be a platform where that sort of structure took place, because it was very original at the time for an independent company like this to promote a show in this fashion outside of just regular TV that everyone was so used to. So this was really one of the first examples that I remember watching as consistently as it was, and as good as it was too. It wasn't just, you know, your typical sketch comedy, just basic, you know, YouTube stuff. It was very, you know, well put together. It had a high production budget. They would get big guests on there. They would get, you know, real celebrities on there to come and promote their stuff, which was awesome. And the food along the way looked incredible. I remember I was like showing my parents and stuff. I was like, can we make this for dinner? Because it looks so good. So yeah, absolutely a huge influence on me. Definitely a thumbs up. If you get a chance to check it out, it's still on YouTube. You can watch all the episodes. They have a full playlist. So I'd highly recommend that one because that was a lot of fun back in the day. Gus and Eddie here, our next one, another YouTube show. This one, more of like a podcast, if anything else. They just have, you know, they'll have some guests on. They'll just talk about whatever, do some comedy bits. Like I said earlier in one of my previous tier list videos in this series, I'm not really a fan of Gus Johnson at all. I mean, I wasn't really a big fan of him before his whole controversy and before the whole situation went down, because his humor just was so juvenile and it was so repetitive after a while. But Eddie Burback is hilarious. His channel is one of my favorites. He is so good, so versatile. He just has some really funny ideas for videos he'll do. Like one of his most recent that really blew him up was he went to see Morbius 5 days in a row just to like see just really how bad it was, because he's always speaking like, you know, a lot of these people, they only watch it once and they get a first impression. So what if you watch it a bunch and then you really get to see how bad it is? You get to see every detail. So that was a great video that he did. But this is one of his other shows, and they had, you know, good chemistry together, but you always, in the back of your mind, you're like, I wish it was someone other than Gus Johnson. Just wish it was distanced from that. So that was kind of my take on it, but it still could be fun at times, so I'll put it in the good tier. Next up, we have Brutal Moose here, another YouTuber. He does a lot of different types of series. He does do some cooking stuff. He'll do like, he calls them like frozen food reviews, where he'll take like a Stouffer's or something, or like Lean Cuisine, and he'll do like a full like review of these frozen meals, which is pretty funny. But one of my favorite shows that he has is this mystery VHS that he'll do. So he'll go to like a thrift store or a garage sale or something, and he'll try to get these unmarked VHS tapes that people just have recordings of, and he'll look through them and he'll talk about the commercials on there. He'll talk about recorded TV episodes of, Star Trek or Xena or, whatever shows that you just happen to come across. And it's always just like the craziest things that people archive on these VHS tapes. If you ever get a chance, like maybe your parents or you have some relatives or some friends or something that kept their old VHS tapes, go through it one day and just kind of see what you have archived there, because that's always a really fun adventure just to see what we have. Matt is really into that stuff, and we have some old ones that our parents archived, and he found one that was just a bunch of episodes of Becker, of all things, and it was just like the most random, assortment of different shows on there. So yeah, if you ever get a chance, that's a really cool show to check out on Brutal Moose's channel there. So I'm gonna put it in the great tier. Very, very versatile again. Just a very, very fun personality Ian is. Screen Rant Pitch Meetings here with Ryan George. This is a really funny show, man. Just little sketches here. He plays what essentially is supposed to be like a TV producer or a movie producer, and the idea is like, what if he was to pitch these really popular franchises and like break it down to the most obscene levels, like, talk about all the flaws and talk about all the plot holes and everything about these different shows, and like what the reaction would be in a pitch, in a screenwriter sort of setting there. And he just does it in the funniest way possible. The Walking Dead one is one of my total favorites, because it points out just such an obvious plot hole from the very beginning of the series, and it like really makes you think about like, wow, I can't believe they didn't catch that, you know what I mean? I can't believe they missed that. So it's just really fun how he does it. If there's, you can look through the playlist that they have. I guarantee they'll probably do one on like every big movie or any big TV show in the last like 10 years or so. They've probably done a parody for it. So go and find one that you really enjoy, and then see like how they ruin it for you, because it's so funny to see what they talk about with these different shows. Next up here, we have yet another cooking show. My Family Recipe Rocks here. This was a very short-lived but super fun show, hosted by, of all people, Joey Fatone, if you can believe it or not, the singer Joey Fatone. He would go around and he would literally just go to random, everyday people's houses, and they would cook him these family recipes that they have, and they'd have him try it, and he'd give feedback and stuff. It was a very simple stand and stir show, very, very simple concept, but it was so fun, so wholesome. This was a great comfort show because it was super pure. There was nothing like, it wasn't a challenge. There wasn't, this urgency where, you have this, timeliness to it. It was just people cooking, people having a good time, people hanging out with their families. Joey Fatone was a great sort of glue to hold everyone together and just have, a great time with everybody. He was just very personable, very charismatic. I don't know where exactly you would be able to watch it, because the channel that we saw it on was called Live Well Network, which is now defunct, and they don't exist anymore. So I'm not sure if it's archived anywhere, but if you ever get a chance to check it out, man, I think it's really worth a watch, because it's just such a fun show, just super, super genuine, super pure. My Life as a Teenage Robot here on Nickelodeon. This was also one of the most overlooked Nickelodeon shows out there. I loved this one as a kid, man. Jenny was such a great character, and I can't believe that more people don't recognize it as such. I mean, obviously, everyone loves SpongeBob, right? I'm totally in that fan base just as much, but and then there was Fairly Odd Parents and Rugrats, and there was some classic Nickelodeon cartoons, but man, My Life as a Teenage Robot definitely one of the most slept on ones. Great action on the show, super funny as well. Kind of like a slice of life, had some coming of age almost type themes to it. It was really, really well done, and very, very underrated. So that's my take on it. My Three Sons, this is one of the oldest shows we have on here, started back in the 50s and went for 12 seasons, if you can believe it. This show from the 1950s and 60s went for the same amount of time as The Big Bang Theory, which is just mind-blowing to me. It was one of the oldest sitcoms that lasted as long as it did. Excuse me. I'm going to put it in the good tier. I think it's a fine show for what it is. It's probably not something I would watch over like an I Love Lucy. It doesn't hit the same heights as a show like that, but it can be fun at times. It almost kind of reminds me of the Brady Bunch to some degree, because they have, this big family kind of that it centers around. And so a lot of the comedy and a lot of the humor comes in just the like situations they'll get themselves in, because they're just a big family and, kind of this small little tightly knit area of their house. So that can be kind of funny at times, but it maybe just hasn't had the most, lasting legacy compared to some, even though it was on for as long as it was. But the quality was always just kind of middle of the road. So take that for what it is. Mystery Diners here. This was not a good show, man. This was kind of like Food Network's attempt at a Kitchen Nightmares or like a Bar Rescue sort of idea, where they had these cameras set up and they would watch how a restaurant kind of goes through their day-to-day operations and catch what was wrong with the place, because a failing restaurant, so they had these people come in undercover and kind of set these traps up and to see what was up and which employees were acting up and what the restaurant in question could do better. And it just felt very watered down, and it didn't have a lot of personality to it that you couldn't find elsewhere. The host, I don't even remember his name, he just was so plain, so vanilla, because the whole gimmick with like a Kitchen Nightmares or Bar Rescue is that the host in question, Gordon Ramsay, John Taffer, they are extreme. They will yell, they will throw shit, they will be in your face. They are not afraid to hold back on you. And so the problem with this show is that it's just kind of like, John, maybe you could talk to your dishwasher about not leaving the silverware out there like he did on Tuesday night. Maybe that'll solve your problems, So it just didn't have enough to really warrant making a show for it. You know what I mean? Like the situations were so tame. So I don't know. That was just my take on it. But maybe it did get more extreme as it went on. It was on for a very long time, but I just never really paid enough attention to it to really care to watch any of the later seasons. So I don't know. But I just was not a fan of it whatsoever. My Strange Addiction, another one that I gotta be honest is not for me, man. This is another one that Matt really enjoys. He likes a lot of these like A&E and like TLC type of reality shows, like documentary type stuff. This shit is weird as fuck, because there are some people out there that like genuinely need help more than therapy. They need something more extreme than that, because they're like eating couches and they're bathing in like coffee and like cow urine and shit. I mean, it's just the craziest fucking nonsense I've ever seen. And I get that it's kind of interesting to see that to some degree, but it's also like just really gross, like why are we exploiting these people for entertainment? That's kind of where it gets kind of icky for me. But just like the actual sight of people doing what they do and knowing that it's an addiction, it's not something that's like, it's voluntary in the way that they choose to do it, but it's also like a mental thing, that they can't stop doing it. So it's just, I just can't with this show. It's just so gross. I'm not going to put it in bottom of the barrel because it's not like offensively bad in the sense that it's like, oh, it totally rips on something else. It's certainly its own unique thing, so it's not taking from anything else and making it a worse version of it. But yeah, just the idea that it exists as a whole is just really gross to me, really icky, so get it out of here. Mythbusters, on the other hand, now this is science and documentary stuff done right. This is a lot of fun. It's very well known that the two guys in question, Adam and Jamie, just absolutely hate each other in real life, which is so funny to me because you would never know it on screen because they work so well together. But yeah, it was a fun show. This was kind of in the same league as Bill Nye almost, where I remember, at least in high school, we watched a lot of Mythbusters actually in science classes. This was another one that they really did hype up as very educational, and it would teach you a lot of great aspects about engineering or robotics or stuff like that in sort of the tech world. Not as much as Bill Nye was. You know, everyone knows Bill Nye, but every once in a while they put Mythbusters on, and that was a lot of fun to see. So I'll put it in the good tier. Nancy Drew on the CW. This is a really interesting, like, detective, mystery show, kind of based around the just general character of Nancy Drew. I don't think it takes after any one work specifically. It's just kind of the overall tone of what the character is always meant to be. It certainly is like a very CW-esque show. It's a teen drama at heart, and it has a lot of those, kind of cliche CW-esque elements to it, which take that for whatever it's worth to you. But for me, it's not terrible, but it's not something I would watch all the time. So I'm just going to kind of put it in the middle of the pack here at the good tier. Can be fun in small doses is kind of the best way I would attribute it to. Naomi here as well in the CW. Now, this one hurts because I really like Naomi, man. If you saw the pilot project, man, I really, really dug this show. I did. So recently they announced their schedule for 2022 to 2023 and all of the shows that eventually got canned, and this was one of them. Naomi only made it to one season, and I haven't seen anything past the pilot yet, but I'm really, really disappointed now because it's only like 10 episodes, and knowing that there's not going to be anything else, so now I'm kind of scared to see and get my hopes up, because if they leave it on a cliffhanger, then I'm screwed. So, but from what I have seen, I really dug this show, and I think this was kind of a turning point for the CW to really break into, expand on what they were doing with their superhero type stuff, and they got a lot of pushback for this because of the casting choices, her being a black woman and all. It's just naturally going to pull some people out of their fucking incel caves and write on IMDb a fucking racist rant about the CW. So I don't know, maybe that's why it got canned, because they couldn't handle the pressure of it. But for whatever reason, I don't know, just people acting the way they are nowadays. I don't know what to tell you there. But still, quality-wise, really, really good stuff. A1 tier, it is going. NCIS Los Angeles here. I've mentioned this show here and there. I don't know if I've ever really done a super deep dive onto it, but I've mentioned in passing before. It's fun. It's a lot of fun, man. It's a great action show. If you like just very basic procedurals, like a very simple villain of the week type of setup, like a Law and Order or something, but you want just more energy and more action to it, this is a really good show for you, because every episode is going to give you explosions and gunfights and car chases. I mean, they do not skimp on that, and it's testosterone filled fun is the best way I can describe it. It's been on forever too. I think it's in a 13th season or something like that. It's like one of the longest running dramas ever. LL Cool J, of course, known for being a rapper, of course, is the lead on here, which is a ton of fun. He's great on the show. Sam Hanna is a great character. But yeah, it's just a ton of fun, and it's kind of turn your brain off TV. You don't really have to pay attention to an ongoing story. There's not going to be any super deep subplots, which for some people that's not going to be what they're interested in. They like a more in-depth character-driven story. So that, for those types of people, it's not going to do much. But if you're just looking for something very simple, very, just relax to and just have some fun with, that's a great option for you. On the other hand, however, NCIS Hawaii, I would steer clear of personally. This one, honestly, it tries to do a lot of those things that, the NCIS franchise as a whole does, but I just feel like the setting, for whatever reason, like being in Hawaii, it sounds really cool on paper because they're in like a beach setting, it's, tropical, they have a little bit more variety in that regard. But for some reason, it just doesn't work as well. I don't know why. I can't really put my finger on it, but I just wasn't really into this episode that I saw. And overall, it was kind of more deemed as like a bit of a disappointment for CBS as far as, the response it got from critics and whatnot. It was still pretty popular, so they did redo it for season 2, which makes sense. But I just, as a whole, quality-wise, I would stick to LA personally if you're looking for just a fun action show. I think that's a much better option than NCIS Hawaii there. Nostalgia Critic here. This one is going to go up in the good tier. This is interesting because a lot of people, myself included, have compared this to AVGN. And if you saw one of the earlier episodes here, we talked about AVGN and how just influential and just how big and impactful that series was for online creators and just, you know, the market of TV shows being online and being self-produced and such. James Rolfe behind AVGN was such an influence and such a big part of so many people getting their start into that phase of it. And Doug Walker from Nostalgia Critic, respectively, did a lot of those same things to help pave the way for what we know now as just, you know, online web shows. The problem, however, is the way that they approached it was totally different, because AVGN was much more clever and it had a lot better writing to it. It was a little bit more just like nuanced in how it came off as being, you know, a little more technical. And James Rolfe has some experience with filmmaking in general, so that sort of, you know, more professionalism really shined through there. Nostalgia Critic was just loud equals funny, and we're just going to make fun of these dumb movies because they're easy targets, right? We're going to do every Transformer movie a bunch because Michael Bay is an easy target for lame jokes, right? It's kind of the impression that most people got. And I think now, especially in like the current state of it in the last like maybe year or so, the series has just completely overrun itself into the ground of just self-parody. And there's just no relation to where it once was. As much as people love to complain about modern AVGN, it still holds a little bit more of that, you know, its older self within it, because it hasn't really changed its formula all that much. Nostalgia Critic eventually had to just completely redo its entire structure because the way that the copyright system eventually went down, that the movies that they were using, they couldn't play a single clip of it at all. So they would just not use any clips for their own reviews, which in this particular style is just a recipe for disaster. And so they would do these live action skits parodying the movie, and that's when a lot of people, myself included, just tuned out, because that was just way too overboard with the self-deprecation and the self-parody and such, and that was when a lot of people lost it. So even though it definitely has gone into the ground and it's pretty much, you know, DOA at this point, I would still say that it holds some weight for its legacy, and Doug Walker as a whole seems like a pretty genuine guy, all things considered. So, you know, taking everything into consideration, I'll put it in the good tier, but quality-wise, it's far below anything else, especially at the time, compared to something like AVGN. New Amsterdam next up here. It's a medical show. It's not part of the Elite Five, so goodbye, my friend. Bad tier it belongs. New Girl as well, going even lower here on the bottom of the barrel. Can we stop pretending, for the love of Christ, that New Girl is good? Because everywhere I turn, on TikTok, on Twitter, on YouTube, like every fucking person, it seems like, except for me, loves this show, thinks it's the second embodiment of Jesus Christ. Loves Zooey Deschanel, loves Jake Johnson on here. And I think most of the cast is very talented on other things that I've seen them in. In fact, Stumptown is a really good show in a completely different genre even, that Jake Johnson was one of the leads on, and he does a phenomenal job there in more of a dramatic setting. I don't know why this doesn't work for me, but it just doesn't, man. And I'm just sick of people saying that it's so good and giving it so much hype, because I just don't find anything, you know, positive to say about this one. I'm sorry, but it's going in the bottom of the barrel. You know, I don't know what to tell you. News Radio here, on the other hand, this is a pretty decent show. I'll put it in the meh tier. You know, it's pretty forgettable, all things considered, but for its time, it was a lot of fun, and I think the cast is very interesting here, because you have two people in particular that went on to do like completely different things that they got their start on this show, which were Andy Dick, who's now just like a total oddball comedian and has just this like weird cult fan base that follows him around, but he's done some really interesting projects. And then you have Joe Rogan, that got his start on the show, who's now, you know, the biggest podcaster of all time, and he's got a weird cold audience as well that follows him, and he's pretty controversial in his own right. Love him or hate him, he's certainly popular. So all things considered, you know, it's an interesting just time capsule of a show that got a lot of people on the you know, off the ground, and it was a very show of its time in the sense that it purely could exist in the 90s for everything that they talked about on the show, and the setting of the show being in like a radio, you know, being like radio DJs and stuff, which was obviously more popular back then, so it would work well in that setting. So probably hasn't aged the best, which is why it's only getting met here, but you know, all in all, if you decide to check it out, it's probably not the worst thing you could go for. Next Level Chef here, another cooking show, this one with Gordon Ramsay here. I really dig this show, man. I think of all the more recent cooking competitions out there, this one is certainly kind of over the top and can go off the rails at times, literally, if you know what I'm talking about. But it's still a lot of fun, and especially if you're a diehard Gordon Ramsay fan like me, I mean, this is going to be right up your alley, of course. I'm glad that it got renewed for season 2. In fact, the premiere episode of season 2 is going to air directly after the Super Bowl this year on February 12th, 2023. So I'm really looking forward to that, because the Super Bowl always brings in huge viewership for any show that comes after it. This year it was the Olympics that got a big boost in it. So that'll be very cool to see, because a lot of people probably haven't seen Gordon Ramsay be as popular as he was in the last few years, because he just really has like a small cult following now. But that'll definitely turn some new eyes to him, so I'm very curious to see what they do. And that's the premiere episode, so they're going to do something all out for it, which will be very fun. Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide next up here, another Nickelodeon show that I think, similar to My Life as a Teenage Robot we were talking about earlier, gets super slept on, and I don't know why, man. This is a great show. It honestly could be an A1. Actually, you know what? No, fuck it. Let's go A1 tier, because why not? This is my list, and I can do what I want. And that pilot episode is top 10, and I disagree with you, and I think you're objectively wrong if you say otherwise. So there you go. There's my justification for it. Top 10 all the way. Obviously, Lindsay Shaw, you know, listen, she has her fucking shit going on. Everybody that we've talked about like that, you know, we've talked about so many actors and so many musicians on this channel in the past that have gotten, you know, so much flack for stuff outside of whatever show they've been working on. Listen, I don't really like her. I think she's a racist. This is the piece of it, all right? But everybody else on the show, Cookie's great, Gordy's great, of course Devin Werkheiser is hilarious, so they're all fantastic. And the show itself super nostalgic for me, so I'm not going to hold it against you, man. That's just how it is.